Sailing downwind in light air is one of the trickiest conditions to master in the laser. It's a fine balance of sailing incredibly accurately, picking the right angle, pushing Rule 42, and constantly sailing in pressure. In this video, we're breaking down how the best sailors in the world sail downwind in 4 to 6 knots and highlighting some of the techniques that they use that you can start implementing in your sailing to become a master of these conditions. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Dan, and I went from sailing for the very first time at 12 years old to racing and training with the best in the world only 6 years later. Now I help sailors like you finally escape the middle of the fleet and achieve the results you've been looking for through my YouTube channel and Substack. Since this is such a big topic, I'm going to be breaking it down into a couple of videos because there's two main areas you need to focus on to master these conditions. The first one is your technique and the second one is your strategy. And these both play an equal part in doing well in these conditions. In the lightest of winds, your technique for going fast downwind is going to consist of two components. The first one is subtle, accurate main sheet, body weight, and rudder trim. And then the second one is well placed and well executed jibes that give you that little boost of acceleration you need to keep you moving down the course. I know that sounds like it's breaking Rule 42, and to be honest, I think a lot of sailors are in these conditions, but I'm going to give you some tips on how you can stay as close to the rules as possible and avoid getting yellow flagged. Let's first dive into the boat speed component. So when the wind is this light, there's usually no opportunity to surf waves. So your best boat speed is going to come either by going by the lee or going on a broad reach. You're basically never going to be sailing directly downwind unless you have very good pressure and you're trying to soak towards the mark. If you take a look at this shot here from race 7 in the Gold Fleet of the 2018 World Championships, you can see basically no boat is going directly downwind. They're kind of all going at an angle out from the mark. In these conditions, going directly downwind is going to be insanely slow, and you need to sail these angles to generate some flow over the sail and build up your speed. Then once you've built up your speed or you're in a good gust, you might consider starting to head a bit back towards the mark, but mostly you're going to be sailing these angles and jibing from angle to angle at the opportune time where you have a good gust or a good shift with you. And that's where jibing comes into it. I nearly think about sailing in these conditions kind of like sailing a boat with an asymmetrical spinnaker. You can kind of have these fixed angles coming downwind, and you need to kind of pick your course based on the pressure, the shifts, and the fleet, and optimize the best angle at the time, and swap between the angles constantly throughout the downwind to pick the best course. Taking a look at this shot here of Finn Lynch sailing downwind, who's currently leading the race. The first thing you should note is he's sailing by holding the main sheet in front of the ratchet block. So that's going to give him a lot better feel for the main sheet and the pressure in the sail. The second point I want you to look at is his legs. So he's very far up or in front of the cockpit. One knee's around the centerboard basically, and then the other knee is wrapped under the hiking strap, pulling the boat a little bit to windward. You don't need to pull it massively, just a tiny bit. And when you are pulling it just enough to windward, what you'll notice is that if you let go of your tiller extension, your rudder will stay straight. So that's when you know you've got the right amount of windward heel. And the other thing you see Finn doing is when he has a little bit of pressure or extra speed, he starts subtly sheeting on the main sheet and flattening the boat a little bit to head a little downwind. So it's very, very accurate. It's like maybe 1 or 2 handfuls maximum of main sheet, and just gently pressing the boat flat to start getting it to sail a bit more downwind. But then once he needs that pressure again, he'll heel the boat into windward, release the main sheet a little bit, and get back to that by the lee angle. It's really important in these conditions to keep your movements in the boat very gentle, because any disruption over the sail or the rudder is just going to slow you down to a complete stop and kill all the flow of wind in your sail. Looking at this shot here of Philip Bull, this is a guy who's on the bigger side in the men's fleet, but still doing very well in these conditions. You can see how far out his sail is when he's going by the lee. His boom is probably at 110 degrees to the boat, and then sitting very far forward, also going with that knee tucked under the hiking strap to pull the boat just a little bit into windward. But you can see, even for a bigger guy, being very gentle and very subtle with his movements. So you can see a pretty interesting technique here from Matt Wern. You can see he's actually holding his tiller extension kind of behind his back whilst he's sailing downwind. So that's kind of like what a lot of boats and sailors do upwind, but downwind, putting the tiller, holding it against the deck to try and minimize movement of the rudder. And then being very smooth with his body weight and sheeting, barely moving the boat at all. You don't see it rocking at all. The other crucial technique for going fast in these conditions is using your jibes to gain a little bit of speed. Now, I know it's illegal to come out of a jibe faster than you went into it, but to be honest, nearly all of the top sailors are, and there's kind of like an unspoken agreement amongst the top sailors that accelerating well out of a jibe is actually a mark of skill rather than a violation of the rules. And there's also kind of this agreement that in these conditions, you can jibe a lot more than you usually would for tactical purposes. And the reality is that it's actually quite hard for a jury to judge if you have come out of a jibe faster than you went into it. So the chances of getting yellow flagged is actually lower than you'd think. Let's take a look at a quick example just to demonstrate how many jibes some sailors are doing in these sort of conditions. Following Charlie Buckingham and Matt Wern here, we see both of them jibing from starboard to port at the same time. And you'll see this a lot in these conditions. One boat initiates a jibe, and then other boats pretty close to them will also jibe. They don't want to miss out on that acceleration, but with that other boat first jibing, they can kind of claim their jibe was tactical and not just for acceleration. And it's crucial not to overdo this. If you're jibing every 20 seconds, then it's going to be pretty obvious to the jury why you're doing that, and you're just kind of asking for a yellow flag. And now, less than 40 seconds later, you see Charlie initiating another jibe, and Matt's just going to follow. So really doing a lot of jibes in these conditions. And then when we zoom out, you'll also see the kind of domino effect where a whole heap of other boats in the fleet will start jibing when other boats have jibed around them. There's basically two types of jibes that you're going to use in these conditions, and you use them in very different scenarios. So the first one is a lasso jibe, and that's where you grab the main sheet from above the traveler and you kind of lasso the boom over your head. And then the other is a regular roll jibe, and we're going to go into a couple of examples for both of these and talk about when you'd use one or the other. The first jibe we're going to talk about is the lasso jibe. This is one you only do in very light winds when you can control the boom from the traveler. And you basically use this when you want to change the angle of the sail but not change the angle of the boat. So imagine you're going by the lee on one jibe and you want to stay pointed in this direction, but you want to just switch to a broad reach on the other jibe. That's when you'd use a lasso jibe, because you don't steer a lot through the jibe. But let's take a look at an example of Matt Wern doing one just here. Taking a look at Matt Wern here, we see the first thing he does in the lasso jibe is he uses his tiller extension to scoop up the traveller whilst leaning the boat to leeward. And then with his one hand on the tiller extension, scooping up the traveller, the other hand grabs the traveller. Next, he keeps the boat heeled to leeward, and once he's got the traveller in his hand, he actually lets the sail fill again. And then once the sail's full, that's when he starts the jibe. So he then pulls the boat on top of himself. And because the sail's full, he's getting a really nice pump out of that movement where he grabs the traveller. So, and then as the boat comes back on top of himself, he whips the boom over his head onto the new jibe, sits on the old side just to get the boom out, even pushing the boom out with his hand just to help it get out a bit easier in this really light wind. And then he gently swaps sides to the new side of the boat. And you want to notice how he actually swaps sides. He did it really softly so that he kind of just slid over to the new side. He didn't like jump down or anything like that. So really smooth, making sure that he doesn't let any flow out of the sail or disrupt the boat once it's on the new jibe. And so you see Matt's just used that as a really nice way to change his angle of attack without necessarily sailing a big angle through the wind. And the other type of jibe that you'll see used commonly in these conditions is a regular roll jibe. This is similar to a jibe that you'd use in 8 to 10 knots as well, but with the body movements a bit more exaggerated to get that extra acceleration effect. And you'll use this jibe when you're looking to shift or change the angle of your boat, not just change the angle of your sail. We'll take a look here at a clip of Philip Bull doing this. And there's a couple of opportunities to pump or accelerate similar to the lasso jibe. So the first thing you see Philip doing is he heels the boat to leeward and starts rapidly sheeting the main sheet from above the ratchet block. And he sheets it all the way in, and then keeping the sail full, he then pulls the boat on top of himself. And so that's really the first pump, going from heeling to leeward with the sail full to pulling it on top of you, and then heels the boat in to windward to initiate the jibe. And then once the booms come across, and you don't really want it to drag too much in the water, but just kind of kissing the water on the new side is okay, he jumps over, and once the sail starts filling on the new jibe, he then flattens the boat and gets another little pump out of it. So again, using any opportunity where the sail's full in your jibe to gain that little bit of acceleration and keep the boat moving through the jibe is really critical in these conditions. So those are the two techniques you need to sail fast downwind in very light conditions. If you like this video, I'm sure you'll also like my Substack, where I send out weekly coaching emails. So hit the link in the description box, or I'll try and put one up here, to head over to my Substack and subscribe. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the bell notification. You'll want to see the next video or next part of this series when I put it out, and hitting that bell notification will make sure you know when I publish that. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.